What up guys, Gabe with Tight Lines here. Today I want to go over just the basics on simple kayak rigging. So lately I've got a bunch of friends that are just starting to get into kayak fishing, and one of the questions that I keep getting asked is, what kind of equipment do I need? You know, for paddles and PFD and all that other kind of stuff. So instead of giving you kind of a rig review of what I have, I wanted to talk to you about what I think is just the basic setup. And this video is based on simple kayak rigging and what I think you need to get on the water. So if you're just getting into kayak fishing, you have one primary purchase that you have to make, and that's a kayak. So it doesn't really matter which type of kayak you get because it has to really fit to your taste and your style of fishing. There's sit-in kayaks, there's sit-on kayaks, there's standing kayaks, and I've even seen people fishing on stand-up paddle boards nowadays. So for me, I chose a Bonafide SS127. It's a sit-on and stand-on kayak. Now, the unique thing about a standing kayak is that you can stretch your legs if you've been on the water for a long time, but the real benefit is if you get into shallow areas in the springtime and you want to do sight fishing, having an elevated position when you're looking down at all the spawning beds gives you a lot better indication of what you're actually fishing for, and you can see bass or panfish in their approach so that you can kind of cast right in there and do a really good job at setting your bait for the fish. Now, I also have used a sit-in kayak. It's an Old Town Vapor. I had that for a couple years before I got into this one. So don't think that you got to jump right in head first with the most expensive thing you can buy. It is optional to upgrade. So I would say Bonafide is probably right up there as one of the best premium value kayaks for the price point. I would say that Hobie is probably your number one bet, but unless you want to invest a couple $1,000s in a kayak for your first time, I would say the Bonafide is actually right in the price point that makes sense for most anglers if they want to get into kayak fishing. Now, the second thing that you need to have when you're getting into kayak fishing is a paddle. Now, I use Adventure Technologies. This is an Oracle paddle. The nice thing about these is they are a carbon fiber tube, so they're pretty light. They're adjustable, so you got a locking mechanism here so you can change the pitch of your paddle. But the really nice thing is they are reinforced with a fiberglass mesh. Now, it's not only through the paddle, it's actually on the tip. They have a double set of meshing. So if you're doing a lot of push off when you're moving through the water, you're hitting rocks and that kind of stuff, this is gonna be a lot more durable paddle than if you go with just a cheap plastic paddle. Now, I would caution you that if you're gonna buy a good paddle to begin with, because they are a little expensive and you don't want to have to go back and keep repeating the purchase. So if you buy cheap, you're going to end up with a cheap paddle, you're probably going to break it. If you go expensive, now I'm not saying you have to buy the most expensive one, but if you get a more expensive paddle, you're going to have a lot more durability, it's going to be lighter, it's going to be more robust, and you're going to be able to have it for probably the life of your kayak, whichever one you choose. Well, the third thing you're going to need, and probably the most important thing you have to have, is a PFD, a personal flotation device. Now, this is an ASON. You can get these on Amazon for 50, 60 bucks. I like this one because it is lightweight. It doesn't create a lot of heat, so if you're in the summer and paddling. Plus, it's got a spot for your GoPro, so if you're wearing a chest-mounted GoPro, it doesn't interfere with that. I also do have a Class 3 PFD. That's a fisherman's PFD. It's got all kinds of areas and spots on the chest and on the sides for putting tackle management stuff or hooks or clippers and that kind of thing. So those are nice too, but if you're paddling in the summer, they do get quite warm. I would say whatever PFD you get, make sure it's a good quality one and always wear it, because this thing can save your life if you're paddling alone. Now, the next piece of equipment that I would recommend you having is some form of anchor. A lot of people use an anchor trolley, which they mount to the side of the kayak, and those are really good. They're nice if you're doing river fishing and all that kind of stuff. They're also great with stakeout poles. As a stakeout pole, you can use in shallow water. They're easy for running and gunning, so if you're gonna drop an anchor in, fish a little bit, and then pick up and go, they're really versatile that way. The problem is they're kind of limited for shallow water. Most people use a 6 or 8 foot stakeout pole. The problem is you need some clearance on your kayak with a stakeout pole, plus you have to get it wedged down into the ground. So say an 8-foot stakeout pole, you're probably gonna be fishing in 6 feet of water or less. Now how you combat that is you use something like an anchor wizard, and that's what I have here. I use the shallow mount anchor wizard, and it comes with the anchor chute, and then what I use for an anchor is a downrigger weight. You can use a claw anchor as well. I personally don't prefer them because if you're fishing in weedy areas, those claw anchors tend to get hung up pretty bad. The downrigger weight is a little bit more versatile. The one that I get has this little fin on the back, so you get a little bit more adhesion where you're anchoring, but it's not stuck like a claw anchor. So when you pull it out of the weeds, it usually comes pretty clean. So that's the one that I like, and I'll show you the anchor wizard and why that is the next thing I want to talk about as far as basic rigging. Anchor wizard, super easy to use, very simple to install, and they're low cost. So I'll show you that here. So here's the anchor wizard. It's a very simple clutch drive system. You've got a cable that comes out of the anchor wizard and goes back to the anchor chute, and that's where you attach your anchor. How you deploy the anchor is you go counterclockwise with the clutch mechanism, and you drop your anchor. When you're ready to reel it back in, you crank your anchor, and because of the clutch drive, once your anchor is all the way up and you lock your clutch in place, you just stop tightening and the tension is locked in place. It's that simple. And that brings us to our last attachment that I think you absolutely need to have when rigging your kayak, and that is a paddle keeper. The thing about a paddle keeper is, what's it for? Well, to keep your paddle in place. Now, if you're standing fishing or you're in a sit-in kayak, sometimes you need to have your paddle locked down, because if you get to shaking a lot, you can end up dropping your paddle in the water. And what's that gonna cause you? Headache if you lose your paddle, which could be a couple $100. It's gonna be a pretty expensive endeavor, plus how are you gonna get back to shore? So, paddle keeper, if your kayak doesn't have one, you can buy a simple attachment or an accessory that comes with the cable, 2 mounting screws, and a catch here. So that way you can lock your paddle into the side of your kayak, which is gonna save you peace of mind, and you won't lose your paddle. One of the other pieces of equipment I think is absolutely necessary is some form of tackle management. Now, I use a black pack, as you can see here. The reason why I use this is it's got a lot of room for storage inside of it, but I can also do attachments. Plus, I can hold my rod, so if I want to reach back, I know exactly where my rods are every single time that I'm going fishing. Some of you don't have space for a black pack, like you might have a sit-in kayak, and if that's the case, you might not even have room for a regular tackle box. So what do you do there? I highly recommend getting yourself a bunch of Plano boxes. Now, the nice thing about Plano boxes is you can categorize them to a specific species of fish. So if you're going out for bass fishing, like this one, it's got frogs and topwater baits, poppers, it's got some worms and stuff like that. Now, if I'm going out bass fishing, I can grab this Plano box and I can hit the water. If you want to go wildlife fishing, you set one up for walleyes, set one up for panfish, or just regular rigging equipment. Now, the benefit of doing that is it takes up a lot less space inside your kayak, and it's inexpensive. Well, that's about as simple as it gets for kayak rigging. I didn't want to give you all my rig setup and all that stuff. I wanted to give you just the basic kayak rigging so that you can get on the water and get fishing. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe down below. And if you're going out fishing, as always, best of luck and tight lines.